like to pay a couple respects to the people that made me what I am today.
Laughing gear.
It's all my love. It's all my love.
The quiet man.
It's all my love. It's all my love.
Dopamine. Jim.
It's all my love. It's all my love.
Welcome to the Soul Patch Podcast, the podcast where today two expats discuss education, culture, and life here on the Korean Peninsula. I'm here with Kevin. Kevin, how you doing, man?
Pretty good. It's a hot day out. Hey, what did you have for dinner tonight? How Korean are you?
Actually, it's so hot. I'm not even hungry, so I just ate some like nuts. That's it. Just had a little packet of nuts. Yeah,
Well, that's a good diet.
Yeah, actually, right.
If you can't travel, you got to get your airplane nuts just at
Yeah,
home
it was
then.
exactly like that. Yeah.
Nice. Well, I'm sure you've heard. Did you know that today is it's one of the Bongnal? It's the dog days of summer here in Korea, as it translates to.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So today is
Right.
Samgaetang Day. And
I love samgaetang. It's my favorite
yes.
Korean dish. Yeah.
Is it your favorite?
It is
It's number one.
Yes,
Nice.
number one.
I mean, I love it as well.
Absolutely.
It's fantastic, but I love most Korean foods. I don't know if I could pick a favorite. That would be tough. Samgyeopsal is definitely a good one, but
I love the because you put like the saltiness of it, like dipping the chicken in the salt when it's really hot and humid, and it's just like it's it's like got that Gatorade effect or whatever, where it's like electrolytes.
That's
or
the
whatever.
idea. So there's three Bongnal days, three dog days of summer here in Korea, and today is the June. It's the middle one. And it's all in the Chinese, the Buddhist calendar, and I don't know exactly how they do it, but basically these days are the hottest days of the year. And so there's the whole, you may have heard this phrase in Korean as well, the iyor chiyor. It's like fight fire with fire.
Oh yeah, I've heard that before. Yeah,
So,
I don't know that.
I mean, I'm sure you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I've
I'm
heard
sure
it,
you've seen people how in the summers they go and they eat hot soup. Like samgaetang is a hot, it's a hot chicken soup. And the idea is that you have a really hot food on a hot day, which I know for Americans, like watching Koreans eat ice cream on cold days and having hot dishes on hot days was baffling when I first came here. But the idea behind it, and they claim it's scientific, and it does make sense, is because you eat hot foods which make you sweat, and the sweat cools you down, of course. And so there is that
I'm not
effect.
sure. The logic doesn't quite square up for me, but I do enjoy it because it just tastes so good.
Yeah. I mean, I'm happy to have samgaetang and have the aircon on to keep me cool, as opposed to
same.
relying on the soup.
Yeah, and I could eat it in the fall, and I could eat in the spring. Anytime.
Sure.
I love the. I like the. It's got the. It's almost like a juke, like a porridge, at the end.
Yep. It's got like the rice in it, and then there's some ginger mountain. Not
What is
ginger.
it's the root, like
yeah.
ginseng. Is that right?
Ginseng. There you go.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the types of ginsengs. It's not. Yeah, but yeah, basically. So I only remembered, like, this isn't something that my wife and I keep track of, but our mother-in-law, my mother-in-law takes care of us. And so she was like, today's Samgaetang Day, and I was like, is it one of the days? And she's like, it is, it's the middle one. I was like, okay. So that was our dinner tonight to help us keep cool because I mean it's getting brutal hot out there.
Yeah. Oh my God, it is. We're trapped in a heat dome, is what they're calling it. My mother-in-law also makes the best samgaetang. Like that's where
nice.
I learned to love it. So I think we're in a similar situations. But I didn't eat it today.
Mother-in-law's Korean cooking are great.
Yeah,
we should have a contest. My mother-in-law's kimchi is probably the best kimchi in Korea. I'll make that claim.
How dare you, sir? We could. My mother-in-law is taller than your mother-in-law. Like we can have that. But the reason I chose today, like the introduction today, is talking about the energy grid. That's what I wanted to do. Was kind of because it made me the hot weather made me think about it as I was reading an article in the Jungang Daily about like possible blackouts. Which
I saw something on Korea Times or Korea Herald. We all, it's all, I mean, every news source
I
had
think
something. I
it
saw
was on
something
the
as well.
front page of like every
Yeah.
all the major papers or whatever, or the online papers,
Right.
newspapers. And yeah, so it just kind of made me like curious, because I didn't realize, I didn't really know anything about the energy grid. And what is, where does Korea, like, how do they generate their electricity here? And so I was wondering if it's okay with you, I'd like to just give you like an overview. And if you have any, questions or whatever, just go ahead and, stop me. But
No, this is cool. This is something that I have actually read about a bit in the past, but it's been a few years because I remember reading about, and I'm sure you'll correct me on a lot of things here. I remember that like Korea was getting a lot of their power from coal plants. There still
yes,
might be.
yeah,
But then, and they were trying to shift to nuclear, but then there were like problems with the nuclear plants, and so then those were issues there,
hmm,
and yeah, so I don't know exactly where it's coming from, but I know the news as well. I was actually just watching the news just a few minutes ago, and I saw something about the potential blackouts that are coming in, and they're asking people and businesses to actually turn off the aircon, or maybe not turn off, but turn it up, set up the temperature
yeah, they've got a
for like 30
whole.
minutes a day or something like that.
Yeah. It's the real problem is that 2 to 5 window, like 2 p.m. to 5 p.m.
Ah, right.
is where it gets really dicey. And so,
Mm,
but here, I'll tell you what,
yeah, let's.
I'll come back to that a little bit later. But first, to just kind of answer the questions you had, uh, Korea actually imports almost all of
Ah,
its energy, like
no kidding.
coal, uh, natural gas, petroleum. They tried
So they import the
to.
fuels, you're saying, not the energy itself. I mean, the
No,
fuel is the
no.
energy,
You're
but
right. It's the I guess like let me see here, 69%. I'll give you the breakdown really quickly.
sure.
Fossil fuels accounted for 69% of South
Mm,
Korea's electricity generation. So what they do is they burn the oil, the petroleum, the natural
right, right.
gas, the coal, and to create thermal heat, which creates
Mhm,
steam, and that's so it makes electricity. And so they have power
right.
plants all over the country. I tried to get a number of like how many power plants they have exactly, but I couldn't find that number. But it's
Huh.
probably like over 100, I think, of just like coal plants and uh, other plants that burn different types of fossil fuels.
It's always
The
surprising to hear a number like that. I just honestly have no idea how much like one power plant can power, right? Like I have no
Right.
idea how many
And
you
it's also
need for
about
how many
location. You
people.
can't, like, Busan can't, I
True.
don't think it can power. It's all, they all have to be relatively close to the areas that they're powering. So,
Yeah, that
um,
makes sense. I
yeah,
remember that from my
I think it
days playing SimCity.
loses. Yeah, like the farther it travels, that you lose the energy or whatever. So,
Okay.
um,
Yeah.
that's the problem with renewables is you need like a wind farm needs to be there's needs to be things in the area that you can power, because it's not
Right,
just
right,
like you can throw it in a basket and ship it 1,000 miles or
right.
whatever. um so 69% is fossil fuels, which is that would kind of surprise me. It's pretty high. So they're burning coal and petroleum and natural gas.
Yeah,
20
I remember seeing
nuclear.
those numbers that when it was talking about, I looked this up in the context of air pollution a few years ago.
Hmm, hmm.
And so that's how I knew that there was a lot of fossil fuel plants, but I didn't, 69% does seem higher than I would have thought. I knew there were a lot,
Well,
but
this
I
is
don't
as
think
of
I would have guessed it
2019.
quite.
So,
Okay.
I noticed
Yeah,
there's
no
like a
idea
lot of
what's changed.
fluctuation too between the years. It was like, so at this time, like 2019, 25% is nuclear. And
Okay.
Korea is kind of famous for its nuclear capabilities, like as far as building power, like nuclear power plants. And
Okay.
recently, they won
Nice.
a bid in Jordan to build a nuclear power plant. They were in a
Nice.
competition with, I believe, France, and
Huh.
they just Jordan went with the Korean company. So we
Nice.
have an
Yeah,
expertise
another
here.
export.
Yeah, it is
Yeah.
an export. Like shipbuilding and nuclear power plant construction and stuff like that. So, there's there's some really talented people in South Korea.
Oh,
Um,
sure.
Now the let's see here. So 25%, 69. The rest, I think only maybe 6% was
Mm.
renewables. And
Is that
so
mostly wind? Do you happen to know?
yeah, it's mostly like it's solar, and there's a lot of solar panels all over the
Mm.
place. We even have some on our building,
Oh, nice.
and you can put that back into the grid. And actually, if we
Right.
had an excess, if we were producing more than we use, we're not. But if we were, we could sell it back to
Nice. Yeah, I
uh,
remember. I've heard about that. That's possible.
yeah. And I think that's the kind of ultimate goal for the. I think the Moon administration was thinking, that we want to. They want to reduce nuclear. They want to
Right.
reduce the coal and the fossil fuels, and I think they were putting a lot into a lot into the renewables. However, I think it's still right now only accounts for 6% of
Yeah,
the
that's
total
not
energy.
very much. I
Yeah.
know, and for nuclear, my understanding is that like again, I was looking all this information up a few years ago in
Hmm.
connection to air pollution. And so a lot of the things that I was reading were very critical about them shutting down and not putting more into nuclear, because nuclear is a, I mean, of course it still produces waste, but at least it doesn't produce like the air pollution that we
Exactly.
see with 69% of fossil fuel plants. And of course, I mean, Korea has just terrible air pollution, and especially in the spring. It's been pretty
Oh
good
yeah.
recently, actually. But but then I was starting to read that although like it would be nice to push more into the nuclear plants, the main reason that they weren't was because, like, I think I read that the nuclear power plants are just getting old,
Hmm. Now, the
right?
nuclear power plants have I actually have I highlighted something about that right here, and I can read it for you. Um, okay. What happened was the Fukushima nuclear disaster in
Yeah,
Japan really freaked people
right,
out. That
right.
scared the pants off of a lot of South Koreans. And then there was also I don't know much about the scandal, but there was some kind of like scandal about regulations. They were apparently they were fudging the numbers about like how safe their nuclear power plants
Uh,
were, and something
Here in
that
Korea or in Japan?
in Korea. So
Okay, yeah.
there was a scandal related to that, and then the Fukushima disaster kind of compounded the anxiety in the
Mm,
country. And so what happened was, I'll just read this here. Um, President Moon Jae-in, elected in 2017, decided to gradually phase out nuclear power. The 3 reactors currently under construction will be completed, but the government decided these will be the last built. And as the existing
okay,
plants close at 40 years end of life, they will be
right.
replaced with other modes of generation. So they're not going to replace these after 40 years. And
Hmm.
so in 2020, it was planned that the number of nuclear reactors would be reduced to 17 by 2034, with a
Okay.
peak of 26 in 2024. So we're going to have
Mm,
26 nuclear reactors in operation in 2024. But then as they hit that 40-year marker, they're not
Start
going
fading
to,
out.
they're going to change, they're going to transition it to another. Uh, I guess, either they have to turn it into a coal or petroleum, or I don't know what they're, maybe natural gas, because that burns a little bit cleaner than,
It's relatively clean. Well, I mean,
yeah.
yeah, I don't know the numbers, but
Hmm.
yeah, that's right. That's where the thing is, like, overall. And again, I don't think any of us are experts on nuclear power, but my understanding of
Hmm.
nuclear power is that it's generally very safe. It's generally very clean, um, but it starts to fall down, um, with age, and that's just
Hmm.
where. And after the Fukushima, people just really started to worry about these plants just failing, right? And so even though it's like, and so people weren't understanding how the technology is overall very safe.
Hmm.
They were just seeing the doom and gloom of Fukushima, and these ones are getting old, and we just have to shut it down completely. And it seems to me that Moon was a little bit reactionary in saying that he's going to shut down all of the plants,
Well,
or phase
I'm
them out rather.
I'm not jealous of Moon right now, to be honest, because he's in a really tough predicament. Because
Right.
because here's the title of the article that I pulled up. It says Moon Government Sees Virtues of Nuclear Power When It's Hot. So when faced with a heat wave and potential blackouts, which could really be ruinous for a lot of businesses. I mean, you're there.
Oh, sure.
I can't remember what the figure was, but it's like millions of dollars an hour or something that is just being lost for, every hour of a blackout is just costing
And of course,
countries so
in
much money.
places where, I mean, in a heat wave where we're in now, and it's only going to get hotter. I mean, this is dangerous for people without energy. You know, there's people who are
Right.
sweating in their homes. There's people who already don't have air conditioning, but at least they probably have fans on or something to help them stay
I mean,
cool. And if
elderly
there's
people that can't move very well. I mean, even in America, when there's a heat wave in Chicago, people die. It's just like,
right, yeah,
it's just it's really dangerous, especially in a heat wave. So let me see here. So I guess we kind of covered the. I think we covered the percentages of the energy, but we didn't
right.
talk about. I'm trying to think here.
I
Oh,
really
okay.
wonder what Moon is planning. I mean, again, you said, yeah, you're not envious of him at all. I'm pretty much never envious of any leader of any country.
I know.
But yeah, it's like they know. I mean, nuclear power is safe generally, like especially the new plants, the way that they're making them today. I mean, if Korea's making them in which country did you say again? Jordan?
Yeah, I think they won a bid
Yeah,
in Jordan.
Jordan. Okay. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, those plants are probably going to be like safe for a very long time. I mean, they're following great international standards. I'm sure there's a lot to them, and they would be very safe, secure energy machines. But again, there's just this public sentiment after Fukushima and after the fact that there was that controversy that you were saying that we just want to get rid of it all. So he's in this bind of it's good energy, but the people don't want it, but we need energy. So
Right.
where do we go?
I mean, Korea, it's a really tough situation for Korea. The coal supply in the country is insufficient and low quality. They can't do hydroelectric power. It's limited here because of the high seasonal variations in the weather and the concentration of, most of the rainfalls in summer. And
Right.
so it's just like they import basically everything comes on ships, and that supplies the energy and electricity for the people on the peninsula. There's no pipeline that reaches us here, so
Right. I
oil
mean, we're
is
effectively an
imported.
island country.
Exactly. It's just we're totally isolated, so everything is coming through. So I think nuclear gave Korea a kind of a bit of autonomy, and a little bit of control of their own
Right.
destiny in a way. And I think that was attractive to them. The problem is, I think, Murphy's Law, right?
Right.
Anything that bad can happen will happen eventually, right? And so Fukushima, those people probably had said the same thing. It's impossible. It can never happen. And yet it happened. And so I think that it's safe. It's as safe as it can be. But if there's a disaster, I just can't even imagine what that would be here with the high population density and a
Oh no,
nuclear.
that would be terrible. Again, from what I
Yeah.
understand, and this is going to, and Fukushima, that was already a bunch of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
It still feels recent. I mean, they're still talking about it in the
I
news
know.
with relation to food in the Olympics and things like that. But
Right.
it
Yeah.
was already a few years back. But I seem to remember reading at the time that the reason it failed was maybe similar to that controversy with some of the plants here in Korea, that it wasn't up to modern standards and it wasn't being kept up to modern standards.
Mm-hmm.
And again, my understanding, and again, I'm not an expert, is that if the power plants are kept up to modern standards, even a tsunami like hit Fukushima should have been okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but again, people are reactionary, as well. They see this, they see our plants are not kept up to standards. And so instead of trying to get up to standards, or instead of building new power plants that are up to standards, the assumption tends to be nuclear as a whole is dangerous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that this is the kind of impossible I mean, if you talk to, I guarantee if you talk to, because the French are also kind of experts at building nuclear, they'll tell you that, you know, it's safer and it's cleaner. And yet, if, you know, the problem is if there's a disaster, that's, you know, it's just the potential fallout from
I
that
had
is going to be so
yeah
extreme that,
yeah
yeah.
I had no idea that France was so into, like, I just had no idea that France was a nuclear power. That's interesting.
Right, the building. I believe this. I believe that's was the country that Korea was in competition with to build a reactor in
Yeah, that's
Jordan.
cool. I just
Yeah.
had never heard that. But yeah, I mean, obviously you're right. When nuclear fails, it fails big. Um, and so there is that issue, and that's, yeah, again, I mean, that's a tough thing. But I mean, the other option, if they're not going to be able to do much with renewables, which really needs to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the reason it's so hot today is because of climate change, and
Right,
that
right,
continues because of things like coal. And I don't think people would be happy. Like, he's caught between a rock and a hard place. People don't want nuclear, but at the same time, people aren't going to want coal. People don't want to support fossil fuel power plants either,
Mm-hmm.
when
Oh
we
no,
already
he's
have
actually
terrible pollution.
he wants to reduce coal as well. So I think
Right.
he's kind of in, he kind of put him, it's kind of the impossible situation. It's like we don't want to burn coal, we don't want to go with nuclear, but right now renewables is insufficient.
Right.
So you have to you have to up one or the other. So I'm not sure what the long-term strategy is for this administration. So because I just didn't follow it that closely, so
Sure.
I just know from reading this article that that now they had to essentially the three reactors that are being built right now, the last three new ones that they're building, they kind of
Mm.
sped it up a little bit. Yeah, they moved the start date up for one reactor to July 18th,
Oh,
another one to
so
July
just a couple days ago.
21st. Yeah, just and
Today.
today, today or yesterday. And there's another one that will go back into operation on July 23rd, which, you know, so
Wow.
they're
Friday.
all he just had to, but I think if you're in the situation where either you can take the kind of like moral stance and say, no, we're gonna let the blackouts occur, or we're gonna
And
you
you
know,
can't do that.
up our nuclear capacity. Of course you're gonna avoid the blackout at all costs.
Of course.
And
Of course.
that kind of made me curious about like blackouts too, because I wasn't that sure what some of this meant. So I'll just read this here and then I'll explain it a little bit. The government's overarching goal is to keep the power reserve ratio, the difference between total supply and current demand, above 10% in the summer heat. So
I saw that.
yeah. Now, did you? I didn't know what that meant. What the reserve amount, and so I have a definition here.
Can I make a guess?
Yeah, sure.
My guess for that would be like basically just the battery powers, right? It's just like what's like, so let's say that Korea produces 100 units of energy. I don't know how energy is stored, so I'm just going to make numbers up.
Okay.
Then if all over the country they want to make sure that they're producing enough so that there's still 10 units left. Is that what reserve means? Like they're always
Yeah, I
keeping
mean,
at least 10%, 10
essentially,
units.
except when you're talking about the grid and blackouts, it's actually the it's doing that measurement, but it's during the day when the demand for power is the highest. So it's like between
Okay.
2 to 5, and if that number in that window of time between 2 to 5 goes below 10%, which is the that reserve amount is the amount left over at its max capacity. There should be more than 10% left over at the highest point of demand in the day. And so
Okay, yeah, because I guess that's true, because the power plants are constantly creating the energy. We're constantly using it. They're not
that's
creating it
right.
and storing it. I mean, at night
If
they're
you just go
creating and
1 to
storing it. We
1,
drain it down during the day.
yeah, if it just goes like 1 to 1, where you're just like, okay, we have, you know, let's say 100 and we use 100, that's a huge problem because there's zero reserve left. And so just one, one percentage over, you got blackouts, right? And then it causes a chain reaction of like, I guess they call those rolling blackouts or whatever, where it's just like, it just causes huge problems. And so if you, I think in 2000, let me see here, I had it down in 2018. Do you remember the summer of 2018? Were you here?
Yeah, of course. I'm sure we traveled somewhere, but then we were back for part of it as well.
Okay, that was a brutal summer. Like that was, I remember that one.
I remember that summer because I remember two things about that specifically. One day that summer, we were out. My in-laws were getting their aircon fixed because you need it to survive, and that happened to be. And so my job was to take the dog out for a walk that day because if the dog is here while the aircon people are installing, she's just gonna go crazy at the aircon people. And so I was out taking the dog for the walk in like the middle of the day in the middle of the summer, and I remember her panting, just like her tongue was down to the floor. And then I remember another day I actually took a screenshot of it on my phone because you know how a lot of weather apps, they show you like what the temperature is, but they also show what the feels like temperature is. And I remember that the temperature on the day, like the official recorded temperature of the day, was over 40. It was like 41 or 42, which is crazy high.
Yeah.
Today it hit 37, right? But then I remember that the feels like temperature, and this is why I took a screenshot of it, the feels like temperature was like 51 or 52. And I was just like, oh my God, like I took a screenshot and sent it to people. It was like, it feels like it's
like Saudi Arabia
degrees.
or something,
Yeah, it's just ridiculous. So I do remember
we get all the humidity on top of the just brutal heat. I mean, it's really the worst of both worlds,
I grew up in Arizona, and as you know, like Arizonas are the vegans of heat. How do you know someone's from Arizona? They're always going to tell you it's a dry heat. And it's true. Like every time I go back to Phoenix now, which isn't very often, but when we fly into Phoenix before I hop in a bus to get up to the mountains, you walk out of the airport in the summer and it's just you're in an oven. But it's a different kind of oven.
It's like a blow dryer
here.
You're driving down the street, you stick your head out the window in the desert like that. It feels like a blow dryer. I mean, it's hot air, but it doesn't. But it doesn't have that. It's not that suffocating sauna feeling of the humidity, and it's just like it's so almost like hard to breathe during the daytime here. I'm just like,
And this summer's so this summer's supposed to be like 2018, right? It's like that's what they've been saying. I've seen that as well. You got to brace for it.
They 8 years ago. So the energy grid, the power reserve ratio fell as low as 4.2% in that summer. So that was 8 years ago. So that would have been 2013, I guess.
I don't remember that summer offhand. Oh, actually, no, I do remember that summer. That was the summer I got married.
Was that that was a brutally hot summer as well?
I don't remember. I remember like around our wedding week, which was the end of August, we actually got a lot of rain. It actually rained on our wedding day in the morning, but it was perfect because it rained in the morning and cleared it out. And then it was just nice in the afternoon. I do remember there being some hot days, but I think this was 8 years ago. I don't remember offhand that summer. Yeah.
Well, the thing about the 2018 summer was the hottest in the highest levels of temperatures in 111 years.
That's probably pretty much ever, because 111 years is probably when they started recording, right?
Right. And how well did they record? I mean, maybe they did a great job. I don't know, but
usually when they say those numbers, it's like the hottest in 100 something years. It's usually because that's when
when they started
sensors started. Yeah,
exactly.
And
right. That's when the thermometer was invented or something. Yeah.
Exactly. That's when they started tracking things, and so it may have been hotter in the past. They can't claim that it never was, but yeah.
No, I mean we're basically burning up the planet as fast as it can be arranged, and it doesn't seem like we're doing anything to stop it. If anything, we're just kind of like, I guess this is going more into politics or whatever, but it's like the ostrich, which stick your head in the sand, the ground, and you know, I mean, it bothers me because I have a kid, you know, and
Right.
so I get in these arguments with these, you know, right wingers and stuff like that, and Facebook fights with relatives and whatnot. Um,
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely out of scope for Korea, though I do very much agree. But this is again, this is where Moon is seeing things like, you know, they need energy,
mhm.
and he doesn't want, and he wants to. You have to stay away from coal, and he knows this as well. I think he's somewhat progressive when it comes to these. I don't know all of his
No,
politics exactly, but
his intentions are great. I think that people are criticizing it because, right, it's like you have to choose one or the other, and I think he says that's kind of a false. You don't need to necessarily choose one or the other, but what I think what he wants is a more robust renewable energy program, and you know, I know that that's what they're aiming for in the next 10 years, and I think the problem is that the problem that a lot of countries are going to face is that the climate change is causing these huge spikes in, you know, just strange weather patterns, and so we get a heat dome, and what do? We're not at that level where we have enough renewables to power up every air conditioner in the country, and so essentially you have to go back to these old methods of energy production, which are kind of contribute to climate change. Or if you go nuclear, you have the possibility or the risk of a meltdown. So
yeah.
I don't
Though I
know. It's
do,
just,
again,
you
I
know.
do think that risk is pretty minuscule.
Mhm.
When everything is kept up to modern standards, as far as I know from my reading, and again, I haven't gone super into depth, but as far as I know, like that, the risk is it's a risk that most countries are, and in my opinion, should be willing to take, because I think the risk is tiny, tiny,
Mhm.
tiny, tiny of a meltdown. Again, as long as current safety protocols are being followed, as
And
if
I just
there's
feel
some
like I
controversy
don't think
about
we have a
things,
choice. I mean, I just think like
right?
this is where, you know, it's either that
We can't
or
go
we burn
coal.
fossil fuels. Like there it really is only two options until renewables can catch up. And
Yeah.
but it's very tricky because, you know, you can't control the weather, you know what I mean? Like, you can't make wind,
No, of course.
you can't
Yeah.
you know, make a sunny day to power a solar panel. So I mean, I think there are just a lot of challenges. So, you know, I'm, you know, sympathetic to the government's situation.
Oh,
Now
sure.
here's
I
what
would like
they.
to know more about the what energy Korea can get. I mean, yeah, like you said, I mean, it doesn't really feel like a solar country. It's interesting that hydroelectric doesn't work here. I mean, they don't have the big dams, and
Mhm.
maybe yeah, the oceans don't have the correct currents for that. I know there's a lot of wind power, but I don't know how much like one wind thing can generate. I've seen a lot of wind things down in Jeju, and I've seen a lot in the mountains when I've been driving from city to city
Isn't
here.
there isn't there a wind farm on the way to Incheon Airport as well? Seem to.
Uh, yeah, it sounds right. I haven't been to the airport in unfortunately a couple of years.
It's a
Um,
shame.
but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, there actually is a surprising amount of wind turbines here in Korea. But
Hmm.
I mean, if as you said, all of the renewables are only currently accounting for 6%, and there's already a seemingly significant amount of wind turbines. Like I have no idea how they would be able to get that number to be a significant amount of the overall country's
Yeah.
electric power.
The thing is, I do think that I bet in 10 years from now, Korea will figure this out. Like I do think that their intention to transition to renewables is sincere. You know what I mean?
Hmm,
And I feel
yeah.
like in the US, I don't get that sincerity. I feel like it's often just paying lip service to progressives, and yet they don't really have any intention to, you know, I mean, like for example,
Well, an
ending
interesting
oil
thing, although we
subsidies.
don't,
You know, why are we
yeah,
subsidizing
I
these
guess
huge oil
that's something that
companies?
we don't. This is something that we actually can talk politics at least a little bit for, because I mean, if we're, I mean, America has a reason, even if it's not the best reason, they have reasons for pushing oil and those type of things because people make money from oil and coal in America, right? And so
Right.
those lobbies are pushing it. Whereas Korea, there's not going to be a lobbyist saying like you should use more coal because Korea doesn't have coal mines really, right? You're saying that they
Right.
import it
They
all.
don't have a vested. They do produce a little bit of coal, but it's not enough
Sure,
to,
some.
yeah, yeah.
Right. And so the lobbying power in Korea for those type of energy is going to be smaller. And so the political impetus is going to be much less on, even if the people want renewables, there's not going to be those people pushing for the non-renewables here in Korea just because there's no reason to push for those non-renewables. Who's going to argue
Right.
that we should burn more coal? Only the people who are against nuclear for whatever those reasons, but there's really no one arguing that we should stick with those power plants.
That's a great point.
I
That
would
is
imagine.
really a great point because you're right. It's the swamp creatures in Washington D.C. that are just, I actually if you pay, watch the news recently, at least like the if you pay attention to like new media, progressive YouTube channels or whatever, they I believe it was the Greenpeace was actually kind of tricked ExxonMobil executive into like a fake interview and got him to basically admit that they've known about this climate change for decades and they've, obfuscated the truth and, you know, they've basically, been lying to the public about the damage that burning fossil fuels causes to the environment. And so I mean it's like to me like this issue reminds me a lot of like the cigarettes of the 90s. You remember in the 90s
Right.
when it's basically just became an untenable position for the tobacco companies? Like there was just no way you could say that smoking is not dangerous anymore. It was just like everybody knew it. Children knew it. Old people knew. Everybody knew, and yet they were still trying to, perpetuate this lie, and it just became untenable. And they finally said, like, "F it, okay, you're right. This product kills people."
Yeah. And yeah, you're very right that like, I mean, this is, I think that actually is a decent comparison. Like, I mean, we've known about climate change and we've known about how fossil fuels are affecting it for a very long time. I was actually just reading something just before we got on our call here that, I mean, some Swedish scientists like half predicted this back in the late 1800s.
Oh my God. Okay.
So, I mean, it wasn't like, well-known news or even science at the time, but it was known that fossil fuels are going to have this impact. And so, yeah, we need to get away from it. Everyone knows Korea Moon is attempting to do so. But again, where is he going to go? He has to go into nuclear, but people don't like nuclear and he can't get into renewables yet, but they're working on it. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the future here. I mean, because again, they're going to start transitioning. And I think, I mean, the future here in Korea and everywhere is going to start changing dramatically. Right now, kind of society still feels that it's kind of just on hold, right? I mean, things are changing, but it's kind of on hold a little bit. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see once society opens up, and I'm going to use a metaphor that I kind of hope will be true, even if I don't necessarily believe it, that society will blossom again after.
I thought you were going to
this.
use the butterfly chrysalis metaphor, but
almost,
I like that
almost
one
as good.
Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't necessarily believe that everything is going to be beautiful and fragrant in the next few years, but it will be interesting to see. And I think we are at a turning point to see where things will go, both in terms of energy, but just in society in general. I mean, how much has changed?
I agree with you
in the past years.
100%. I mean, it just seems like in every facet of life, of society, we're at this inflection point. And if I think COVID kind of sped it up, right? Like this stuff would have come to pass anyway, but I feel like COVID just kind of hit the fast forward button on it, and just it just basically COVID just shines a light on all of the problems that already existed, but we're still kind of in the shadows, and it just kind of it shined a light or shone a light. I don't know what the word.
Shine sounds right.
Shine?
We're English
Okay.
teachers, damn it, we should know this.
I know this is so embarrassing, but yeah.
No, I agree. I mean, we kind of talked about this when we were talking about COVID the other day, and I very much agree, and I think it's going to be really interesting for people to look back at. And this isn't the science that I studied, but I look forward to what people will be analyzing coming out of this, about how, like, to me, it feels that COVID, in some ways at least, jumped some parts of society forward a few years. I don't know how many years that is, but a few years. And we were talking about education not too long ago, and we're all online now, right? And
Right.
there's a lot of people who are saying that online was, to some extent, the future of education, right? That this is going to be where we'll be going. I mean, there's so many free education sources that you can access online these days, right? I mean, there's and these are just like learn things for yourself, not even counting official accredited online universities or programs, of which there are many as well.
Yeah.
And so, like, let's just stick with education really quick, and then go to other facets, because I think COVID jumped a lot of things forward. But like education, I think that's going to be a really interesting one, because again, that's our field. I've got some coworkers that I've talked to who are very pessimistic, maybe pessimistic from our perspective, because we want to get back into the classroom. And a couple of them are saying, like, oh, we're never going back to the classroom. It's proof of concept. We've now shown that we can do courses online, so why would we ever go back? Now, I don't necessarily believe that's going to be true. Personally, I think we will be back in the classroom, but it is true that we've shown we can educate online.
Well,
efficacy be damned, but
you've kind of you've touched on something. I have this really interesting thing happened a couple weeks ago. So I don't know if you follow like New York politics or whatever, but New York City is they're having an election for a new mayor of New York, which is a pretty big deal.
So let me know.
Well, this ex-cop, Eric Adams, I think he won this is for the Democratic seat, but New York is blue. So it's kind of like whoever wins the Democratic primary will become the mayor, most likely. So this was what Andrew Yang, do you know that guy? He was running in
definitely.
there. And
actually, I definitely read a bunch of his stuff.
He's the UBI guy, the Universal Basic Income guy, which we should talk about that.
I like a lot of
what
I love
the idea of UBI.
Yeah.
So, so Eric Adams, in one of his speeches, he says, okay, if you do a full year school year by using the new technology of remote learning, you don't need children to be in a school building with a number of teachers. It's just the opposite. You could have one great teacher that's in one of our specialized high schools to teach 300 to 400 students who are struggling in math with the skillful way that they're able to teach. Yeah. That's what the largest school district in America, New York City. That's what this is. The guy is thinking. I mean,
right. And that's, and the thing is, and that's what some of my coworkers have basically said as well, is that, like, why pay for 10 teachers to teach 200 students, or pick your numbers, when you can have one teacher, one all-star, one famous teacher, of which there are many, who records their programs, and then they use them in perpetuity forever. And then they hire just a bunch of adjuncts to sit around and grade things, right? And from a financial perspective, that makes sense for the school. Of course, they would save a lot of money. And again, this is where COVID jumped us forward. It shows that it does work. I don't think, personally, I'm more hopeful for this. There's very few topics that I'm hopeful for, and this is one of them. I don't think that'll happen, because I still think that students want, well, one, I just think education, I don't think that works as well.
Well, I'll tell you this: like he got so much pushback that he had to walk those comments back, because they were just asinine. People would just thought that's the most ridiculous, dumbest thing I've ever heard someone say about education. So that kind of made me feel good. I was like, okay, people know what time it is. You know what I mean? They understand how education works.
Agreed. Yeah. So I don't see us going completely online. I do think it will push for more elements of classes to be online, and I don't think we're done with it entirely. Like
Hmm.
it will have an effect on our classes in the future, right? Like there's always going to be this online element now. There's always going to be this internet element, but that necessarily isn't necessarily a bad thing,
Hmm.
right? But I do think we're going to be back in the classroom.
I absolutely agree, because I mean, I've got a book over there by I can't remember, what it's like a, educational psychologist, Jerome Bruner, and the book is called The Culture of Education. And in that book, he's talking about the social aspect of learning is so important. It's the being together, interacting with one another. The social interaction is really where all the juice is. And
Right,
it's not with the teacher. It's not the teacher is
right.
more of a facilitator. We're facilitating learning situations. Like we create a
That's
scenario.
what Ryan was talking about last week, and I'm sure if he
Yeah.
was here, it's that he was talking about that class that he said was awesome of 6 students or whatever, and it
Hmm.
wasn't awesome because of the well, I mean, it was awesome because of the teacher, but the teacher was facilitating the education, and so no all-star recorded teacher would be able to facilitate that same class, and he wouldn't, and he said that was one of his favorite classes, in
Hmm.
memory was that, and
Yes.
that's not going to happen online.
No, and I think
So
it's a fundamental misunderstanding of like how we learn. I mean, I just don't think that I can just take like this bottle of knowledge and just give it to you, and then you can, just you know, drink the bottle and you have this information. I mean, it
this
doesn't
isn't the
work that way.
Matrix yet,
Yeah, it's not the Matrix,
unfortunately.
right? You can't learn kung fu and download a under
Believe me,
deep
I wish you
understanding.
could. I would be multilingual and play a bunch of instruments
Oh man,
and
I'd be a
all of this,
black belt in jujitsu and yeah,
right?
speak about 100 languages.
So
Um,
what other than education, just
mhm.
to keep us flowing, because I mean, there's a lot that we can dig into there. What other big changes do you see after COVID here
Well, I
in
think one of
globally
the
and or
huge
in
changes
Korea?
was like that we had this fundamental idea. Now I'm talking from American standpoint. Korea did also do some stimulus, but Korea doesn't have. Um, I mean, Korea has its own currency, but the U.S. dollar is the reserve currency, right? I mean, it's where everybody,
Mm,
when the shit hits the fans, where does everybody go? They go to U.S. Treasury bonds. You know what I mean? Like it's
right,
those are the most stable, safest thing you can do is the U.S. dollar. So, so with that understanding, there was always this like mythology from the mostly from the right, but also from the neoliberal, I'll say quote unquote left, because they're not really leftists. Their economic policy is uh, is conservative, and so this idea
right,
that you can't just give people money, yeah, you
right,
can, and they did, and guess what? It worked, and they should give more, and you know what I mean? Like this idea that I think that idea of UBI is actually used to be just poisonous. You couldn't talk about it in political circles. But like you said, COVID has kind of broken through on a lot of these
a lot of
barriers.
things,
And so this idea that the government cannot just give people money. So no, that's what people that don't have money, they need money. Well, I
yeah,
can't just
yeah.
give them money. Yeah, you can. You did it during
Yeah, and
COVID.
they did do it
So
here in Korea, of course, as
yeah.
well, and I mean, it was considerably less than the States, and the States didn't do a whole lot either,
Mhm.
but there was some. Do you know any other countries that did stimulus check? I'm sure there were some, but
Well,
I just don't
let's
know
take
offhand.
let's take a look at England. Like, what did England do? Well, they just said like the government's going to backstop your payroll. So essentially,
Uh,
we're going to pay the salaries of your employees. And they have
okay,
a see, the problem with America is we have no infrastructure, no system for giving people money. So we had this crazy like
right,
sending checks and all this, and it was very inefficient. So, people are still waiting for their checks. I am.
right, right,
And but in England, they have a much more, they have a better social safety net. And so they were able to just throw the money right into people's accounts and say, basically, okay, what were you making before? Okay, stay
mm,
home and we'll just keep putting the money in your bank account as if you were still working in that job. And so that's the way they backstop. Canada has like cards, so you basically call a number and they put money on a card, and
Okay.
so you know, it's just the problem with America is just like I think it's in our DNA that the kind of individual that
Yeah.
Ayn Rand. You know, did you ever read any Ayn Rand? Like the you know the
I what's her
they're
big book?
horrible books,
It was really bad.
like 1,000
Yeah,
pages. Yeah,
yeah, it was recommended to me by this guy a while
sanctimonious
back,
crap.
and
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So UBI, that kind of income is going to be interesting, and yeah, you're right. I mean, that is something that COVID just opened up, like getting stimulus checks from, like, there have been experiments. I remember reading
Hmm.
about, like this country or this city tried an experiment to see what would happen, but we just did a massive experiment,
Exactly.
unintentionally,
And
and
it
overall it
didn't
was
cause
relatively
inflation.
successful.
It didn't wreck the
Right.
economy. You know, if we're experiencing any inflation right now in America, it's just because production slowed down so much during COVID
Right.
that it's taking, you know, there's going to be a delay as we start producing again. And yet you know, we're so dependent on other countries for our, you know, just everyday products, you know, like even the fact that we couldn't even get like personal protective equipment. We were short, you know, masks because they were
Yeah,
all,
that's
we don't make
all
masks in America.
right.
We buy them from China. So do you
Yeah,
think,
so
let me ask you a question. Do you think that our dependence on imports do you think we're going to start making stuff in America again? Like there's going to be like let's start, we need more factories. We need to build basic goods should be produced in the country, or are we just going to go right back to our old habit of being addicted to, you know, Chinese stuff?
I thought this was a Korea podcast,
Oh, I'm
but
sorry. Yeah, you're
no,
right. You're right. Okay.
you're right. I do think that, I mean, I think this is, again, that's something that a lot of countries are waking up to. I mean,
Hmm.
UBI is starting to work because it was a forced experiment. America, in this case, started to see where their infrastructure failed, and so they're going to see. And again, it was because of COVID that pushed these buttons that caused them to fail. And things failed here in Korea too, and some things worked and some things didn't work. And it was
Hmm.
this push that COVID pushed, and it jump started us to seeing these different things. And some industries have just flourished. I mean, look at
Hmm.
delivery, right? I mean,
Oh, I know. Yeah, you're right.
Amazon, I hate Amazon, but they're flourishing all around the world. I mean, if we want to stick with Korea, Coupang is
Yep.
just blowing up.
Hmm.
But I mean, all of the other like food delivery apps and food delivery services and things like that. I mean, these days people just don't go out. And that's not even for delivering. That's another thing that I think happened. This is something that I think was happening more and more already. But again, something that I think COVID just jump started us forward to. Like, people were already starting to getting used to ordering food online. And I'm not talking about ordering food that you're eating for dinner tonight. I mean, ordering groceries
Yeah, I've
online.
noticed that. I've seen that. That's
Right.
yeah. I
Like, my
haven't
wife
done
and I
it, but
ordered.
yeah.
Oh, did you, do you and your family, do you order
No,
any
we
like,
used to order like this company that kind of sends you like dinner, like you just
oh,
warm it
okay,
up.
like a pre-made.
Yeah, like a
Mm-mm.
pre-made thing, but we've never done the groceries thing before.
Oh,
We've
okay.
never done that.
So we actually, my wife used what the hell, we can drop names, it doesn't matter, we're not being sponsored by them. But Curly Market, of course, is the really big one here
Hmm.
in Korea, right? And my wife was using them before COVID hit for small things. They used to have a really good like cheese selection, and finding cheese here in Korea is not easy, finding good cheeses.
Yeah, yeah.
So they used to have really, really cool foods, and so my wife was ordering like not full groceries from them, but some things.
Right.
And now they are just massive. They're up there with Coupang almost in terms. I mean, Coupang deliver. They're like the Amazon of Korea, and they'll deliver everything from pencils and pens to food. But Coupang or Curly is pretty much more food. But they're amazing, and they've
Hmm.
got like so much cool foods, and you can even do fresh stuff. So you can have them deliver your veggies that you want to have for tomorrow. You want some
Right.
lettuce and tomatoes, and you'll have that at your house before you wake up
And
in the
that's not
morning.
gonna. I don't think it's gonna fade. I think people are gonna still use that.
Exactly. And
You
and
know.
that's the thing is,
Yeah.
I think that, like it was saying, we were already using it a
Hmm.
little bit before, just for kind of the special items that we couldn't find in our neighborhood stores. Like, we didn't want to go to Costco, or we didn't want to go to Itaewon, to the foreign markets, to get whatever special things. Well, we found these couple things online, and so we would order those, but we would still generally do our runs to the market or to the mart around the corner. And I still do. I go to the mart to buy milk and things like that. But now we order a lot more, and a lot more people are ordering a lot more. Like, you know, we're semi tech savvy, not super techy here at home.
Yeah.
And so we didn't order a lot of things online, but other people were. And then there's people who are even less tech savvy than we are, older folks, for example, here in Korea, and they're starting to order more and more online. And they're starting to realize, like, oh shit, this is comfortable.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
And
who
so
wants to
even
go stand in
when,
line at the store and just, you know, the
right,
cart and all the crap
and
you got to
that's
put up
something
with?
that I think, like,
Yeah.
I think that our home lives have dramatically changed as well. I mean, people still want to go out, of course, they want to be social, but when it comes to, you know, chores and tasks and things like that, if I can just push a button and have it delivered to my house,
Mm-hmm.
and now that I've become used to it, I've become comfortable with it. Well, even once the stores open up again, okay, I can go out to the store, and I know the store is safe now. I don't have to wear a mask. You know, we're a year in the future. Everything is fine. I can go to the store, and maybe it's even a little bit cheaper, or I can stay home and have it ordered, as I've done for the past 2 years. You know,
Mm-hmm.
some people are going to go back to the store because, you know, they like the shopping, they like doing their daily shopping. Ryan likes going to the market. You know, he likes that fresh food. He likes picking his fish for the evening.
Sure.
But a
Yeah.
lot of people are going to stick to pushing that button online,
Yeah.
and this is where COVID again jumpstart is. I think this was
Jump
this was
started and blew
happening
up an
anyway.
industry. You're right. I
Right.
think 20 years from later, 10 years later, everybody's ordering online anyway. I mean, the thing
Right.
about Korea is that it's comparing America to Korea is kind of like the, you know, the country that had a good response. They stayed ahead of it, so Korea never really had to shut down 100%, right? I mean, it
Yeah, we
was,
never shut down, although we'll see what happens in the coming weeks.
yeah, right.
But although I don't expect a full shutdown, but we'll see. But yeah, I mean, Korea did handle things better, but it still jump started different parts of the economy in different ways, and things are
Yes.
getting
Yeah.
pushed
And it
in
hit
some
people in
ways.
certain you know, I mean, the shop owners and stuff like that. Some people, the small business owners, did really suffer in the
Oh,
pandemic.
a
In
lot of
Korea,
people have
even though they
gotten.
didn't, you know, shut down technically, um, people
No,
kind of
there's a
shut it
lot of
down by,
shops.
like you said, I'm not going to go into shop anymore. I'm going to do it
Well,
from
yeah,
home. You know?
and I feel really bad. And those are the folks that really needed the stimuli more,
Yes.
are like restaurant owners, PC bong owners, because those are
Yes.
closed down, norebang, you know, those type of entertainment facilities that just got nixed and
Yep.
just got shut down. Those I do think will come back. But it's going to be tough because a lot of those small businesses will have suffered
Yeah,
pretty
they weren't
harsh
able
over
to
the
hang
past
in there
couple
for
of
three
years.
years with no
But
revenue. I mean, it's just
yeah, but those are actually,
impossible.
now that we think about it, and this will be something I think would be fun to continue for another time. But
Mhm.
it'd be interesting to see which industries will are Corona really couldn't affect. And I don't mean couldn't affect it. Like the Noribangs did get affected because people couldn't go to them. But I think that industry won't be affected like the shopping industry. People can't, you know, do Norebang from home. You know, they still want to
Right.
go and sing with their friends. So once things open up again, that industry it'll come back,
And
right?
you just
It'll
made
come
me
back
think about
differently,
movie theaters. I mean, they got
right?
just. I mean,
Oh,
I don't know if
exactly,
I'll ever watch a movie in the movie theater again. I've got to.
right,
It's so comfortable at
and
home.
exactly.
It's
Yeah, there's some things, like for me, there are some. I really want to watch the new Dune film that's
yeah,
coming
oh,
out
me
this
too.
year in
For
the movie theaters
Denny
because,
Villain, yeah.
yeah, I don't know how
Can't
to
say his
pronounce his
name.
name,
Yeah.
but Dune is my favorite book of all time, and so for me, that's a big one. And so but before that, we haven't been to a movie in theaters in probably 5 years anyway.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Yeah.
and now, but yeah, staying at home and watching movies is nice, but there is still that experience. I've actually seen some people now, or some things where the movie theaters are starting to change their business model. Instead of doing the big theater, because people don't want to go to the big theater anymore where there's 100 or 200 people around all
Yeah.
coughing next to them. But
It's like
there's
the big
there
sofa chair with like food and
e-
that kind of thing.
exactly, they're
Yeah.
starting to make a different type of theater where it'll be more of like a luxury, for
Hmm.
lack of a better word, theater. And so that's an industry that I think will be affected. Definitely. Again,
Hmm.
I don't think things like, I think norebangs, that's the one I can think of offhand. PC bangs here in Korea. You know, people still are going to want to go to those, and those can't be replaced exactly. Well, PC bangs, I mean, you can still game from home,
Hmm.
but I'm not a PC bong goer as much. Although I have spent some time playing games in rooms here.
I remember back in the day, the cigarette hanging from my,
Oh God.
like, yeah.
I'm so glad they banned smoking in PC buying.
It's
Pretty much
disgusting.
everywhere. I'm so glad they did. But yeah, there's a lot of industries that I think got affected really hard. There's a lot. I mean, everyone got hit. It'll be interesting to see which bounce back and which do not. But I think that's something that we're going to have to almost come back to, and this is something that we'll have to come back to in a few years and really look back and see.
I mean, right now, yeah, just trying to look in the. I mean, I think there's just so much we could cover right now, but. I'll tell you, know, why don't we could just, I think
we got to get Ryan in this and as well. There's so much more to go.
Yeah, I feel like this is such a big topic. We should explore this a little bit more, maybe in the future, coming weeks or whatever. And so
yeah, let's try and stick a little. Let's see if we can get some real good Korean culture stuff in the next couple of weeks. I know we've been talking about language a few times, and I just saw BTS had yet another #1 hit. So there's some interesting Korea waves that we can get into here in the next few weeks. That'll be fun to talk about.
Yeah, let's make we'll do a real concerted effort to do some cultural podcast, some cultural stuff in the next few weeks. Next week is our 10th episode. So
oh yeah, well definitely have
double
to keep
digits.
something Korean culture for that. I'm sure our listeners want to they want to hear what we have to say about that.
Absolutely. All right, man. Well, that's it for tonight. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button on YouTube. Hit the like button on the videos if you like the videos. If you're listening to the podcast, you can find us on all the major platforms. We're on iTunes, Stitcher, Amazon Music. If you really want to help us out, leave a review on Apple Podcasts. That for whatever reason, it helps the algorithm and gets us in front of more people, a larger audience. So that really helps us out. And you can always shoot us an email at the Soul Patch, but Soul SEOUL, the Soul Patch @gmail.com. Ask us a question. Give us a comment. I think I made a promise that I will read our first email.
Still looking forward to that.
Yeah, I know.
I'm anyone who writes us an email, if there's something you want to hear us talk about as well, that would be cool. We're willing to delve into just about any topics and use our expertise, as it were, to talk about Korea, since we've been here for so long. Us,
we have 45 years
something
of
like
experience in Korea or something. So
Yep.
If you're a new teacher or you're thinking about coming over here or whatever, send us an email and we'll do a whole episode talking about your your giving advice or whatever we can help, however we can help. So yeah,
nice.
There you go, man.
All right, well,
all right, have a good night.
Yeah, see you next week.
Okay, bye.
I like to pay a couple respects to the people that made me what I am today.
Gear.
It's all my love. It's all my love.
The quiet man.
It's all my love. It's all my love.
Dopamine. Jim.
It's all my love. It's all my love. It's all my love.
The brain.
It's all my love. It's all my love.
Hey Bobby.
Let
the bass go.